Great afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn series with Otrain. We're very excited to have Mandy Can from Can Consulting join us today. But first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're watching via our webpage, which is a Lunch and Learn series with Otrain, if you could let us know who's here and get used to asking questions through the chat box. It's just in the bottom right-hand corner. Feel free to put your name in there and we'll give you a shout out later on. Now, today's topic with Mandy is how to avoid the top 5 HR blunders. So let's face it, no one wants a call from the Fair Work Ombudsman. So setting up your HR practices correctly from the beginning is really, really important. What's even more important is to consistently review your HR practices because, as Mandy will tell you, there are always changes to make. So get up to speed with this Lunch and Learn series with Otrain, and I'm going to hand you over to Shane now to talk about why he's really excited about having Mandy speak about something that he's really passionate about and why he wanted Mandy to speak to you guys. So great afternoon, Shane. How are you?
Hi Emma, I'm great, except my speaker just died, would you believe? So I missed I got none of your intro, but that's okay. I got the hand over to me, which will be fine. So I'm really excited to have Mandy here today. Thanks, Mandy, for agreeing to participate. I guess I just want to go back a step and talk about the lunch and learns. And I've had a few people say to me over the last couple of weeks as we've held these, why are we holding like these lunch and learns? You know, our business puts training online, and suddenly we've got someone like Mandy coming in to talk about industrial relations today, and the two don't make sense necessarily. And I guess they make sense for me because our lunch and learns are about increasing capacity and building productivity within the workforce, which is what I think Otrain does. It's not just about putting training online, it's about increasing productivity. And part of that productivity is about all of us getting better at all the things that make up our role. And given that, most of the people that we talk to and most of the people that join us on these lunch and learns are in a management role or a HR or a training role, things like industrial relations are really key. So I'm really excited that we do the Lunch and Learns, of course, and I'm really excited that Mandy can come and not talk about training, but another aspect of building capacity and building productivity, within the workforce. And I'm really, really excited about this topic, which kind of makes me a little bit crazy. I've been involved in employing staff in my own business since 1999, and through that time I've seen the old Industrial Relations Act. I don't even know what it's called now. Maybe Mandy can refresh us. The introduction of work choices in 2006, and then the Fair Work Act in 2009. And what's interesting in my own business is that we spent thousands and thousands of dollars trying to find out what the introduction of work choices, first of all, and Fair Work, second of all, what their impact would have on our business, what we needed to do differently, and what we needed to be doing to make sure we were complying with the new legislation. And interestingly, we spent all that money and got very little advice. And the reason we got very little advice was because the legislation was so new that there was no precedent, there was no case study. Everybody was looking at the legislation, almost trying to guess what it meant and what would be required. Well, the Fair Work Act came into play in the 1st of July 2009, so we've had nearly 4 years of experience where employers have done things and employees have brought claims, and now there's actually some precedent and some case studies. So I'm really excited to hear and learn about what's played out and what's come about in terms of the courts and the case study, in terms of how we should be doing things with this now not so new legislation. So Emma, that's I know I'm geeky, I know I'm nerdy, but I love that stuff. So thanks, Mandy. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to this. Looking forward to the show.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Shane.
So thank you so much, as Shane has said, thanks so much for joining us today, Mandy. I'd like to introduce Mandy Can, the Director of Can Consulting, who will be sharing with us, as we've introduced, the top 5 tips for getting out of HR blunders. So welcome, Mandy. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Emma. And like Shane, I'm a bit geeky when it comes to the industrial laws as well. I love this stuff. I work mainly in the IR field. The other part of my business is HR consulting. So I do most of the IR work, being the Fair Work Act, National Employment Standards, awards, agreements, contracts and things like that. And my colleague does the HR side, recruitment and selection, employee handbooks, development, things like that. So I'm very excited to talk about the fair work arrangements today, and certainly, we can't go too much into the history of, what was before in '96 around work choices and what is now the Fair Work Act and the National Employment Standards. So I have the 5 tips for the listeners today, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions after the session.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mandy. I'm sure Shane will have lots of questions as well. So let's get straight into it. And your number one HR tip is pay rates. So there's a lot of discussion around this and a lot of information around this. What's your thoughts around pay rates?
Okay, well, a lot of my clients and new clients phone and say, well, what do I pay this person? So I guess my response in that situation is we have modern awards, and they actually dictate what the base pay rates are, the overtime rates, the penalty rates and things like that. So that's the base of what you need to pay a person. But I suggest to my clients that they look at the market rates as well. So in particular, if you're recruiting for a role, if you need a new salesperson, for example, have a look at the market rates. What is the market paying for this person? Because if you go in too low and just pay the base rate, you won't have anyone applying for the position, or if they do apply, they're not going to get too far because you're not satisfying what one of the requirements are, and that's a reasonable pay rate. So look at the modern awards, and if you need some help with which modern award you're classified under, you can actually phone the Fair Work Ombudsman, or you can go onto their website, Fair Work Online. You can even check the award through the award finder, where you put in some key information around your industry, what state you're in, things like that, and all of the modern awards that they will come up in a search. So you just click the most relevant one. But a tip with modern awards is they're industry awards. So you need to understand that they are based on the industry, and you need to click into the right one and have a look at the coverage first of all to make sure that it covers your industry, and second of all you need to have a look at the classification structures so you're classifying that person correctly, and that will then form your base rate of pay, and the award will outline penalty rates, overtime rates, things like that. So use the Fair Work Ombudsman's website as a good tool to firstly check your award and to check your rate, your base rate, because some people are still covered under the transitional arrangements, being the NAPSA awards. So that's where it gets a bit sticky, and you'll need to get some advice around those transitional arrangements because they apply to actual base rates.
So Mandy, how would you advise, so that's all to do with the pay rates and the award, how would you advise a client to research the market rates?
Yes.
Do they just go on to Seek, or how would you advise a client to do that?
Well, Seek does actually have market rates, so there's a bunch of reports out there, and you can actually purchase a report, or you can log on to Hays, Hays, and have a look at their salary guide, and you can click into your industry and have a look at their salary guide per industry. They'll actually just email you that part of the report. I've found that very helpful in when I'm researching market rates for my clients, to have a look at the Hays salary guide. But a whole bunch of recruitment agencies actually do a guide as well. So you can log on to a recruitment agency that you may use and get their guidance on the market rates, because as you can appreciate, they go up and down depending on, supply and demand, that type of thing.
Yes. Shane, do you have any thoughts on what Mandy's just said? You've just given us a whole bunch of resources, so thank you so much. Shane, with your experience of hiring and firing, on the hiring side of things, is that a process that you've been through with, researching the award rates and the market rates?
Yeah, and I guess a couple of things that we've found in our recruitment business. In terms of the market rate, one of the things that we do, and we have a standard interview question for every candidate, and that's, you know, how much are you worth, or how much are you looking for? And we don't make any promises, but we ask that question, and it's interesting, you know, to get a feel from the candidates that are in the pot. We never advertise pay rates when we advertise a role, so that's something that we do internally. And with the Fair Work site, Mandy, I'm interested, one of the things, or the challenges that we have all the time is, you know, the legislation is fairly ambiguous, and there's multiple ways that it can be interpreted, from you know, things like categories of employment. Even you mentioned that the NAPSA and the transitional arrangement, which was, you know, for those people that don't know, bringing all of the state awards in line under one federal award. There was different pay levels, and suddenly they had to make them the same. So it transitioned out over 5 years. But how do you either make sure you've got the right rate, or B, cover yourself, so if you have got the wrong rate, you can at least demonstrate that you've tried your best to or interpreted the award in such a way that was the case?
Yep, sure. With the Fair Work Commission, they look at it over a test called the Better Off Overall test, or the BOOT. They need to ensure that people are better off overall. So in particular for professional roles, if you're saying, well, this is our salary range, we're going to attract people that want that type of salary, and I'd say some of my clients don't like to advertise the salary, particularly on Seek, but for the lower level admin, manufacturing type roles, I always suggest that they advertise the salary. You want the person to do a self-selection there. So if you're just paying just above the award rate or the award rate, always advertise the salary, because that will certainly weed out people who are applying, and you won't have to go through 300 applications. So for the professional roles, and having a figure in mind of what you deem to be reasonable, you just need to know what the base rate is, and then if they're going to do reasonable additional hours, i.e., they might be required to do 45 hours a week, you need to make sure that they'd be better off overall from the base rate, overtime and penalties involved with that, a rate that is going to compensate them for those reasonable additional hours. And I get that it is quite difficult when you're coming to that realisation of, well, actually, what is the base rate? I might be under a NAPSA or I might not, but the Fair Work Ombudsman are there to answer your questions. So I'd say phone them, or try the award/Pay Checker Plus and do that first. But if you're confused, phone them on their 1300 number. They are there to help people to do the right thing. And even if it comes to a dispute and you had all the best intentions, that is your defence. You're not underpaying them because you're a mean employer. You just didn't have all the information, and that's particularly pertinent for a small business. So that's under 15 head count, which is what the Fair Work deems a small business. They need to have a look at, what's the undertaking of the business, what size are they, did they have dedicated HR, things like that. So they're quite forgiving if you're not intentionally doing the wrong thing, and they are there to help you.